Sonia from Amanita Acres. It is a bright sunny day, but it's still bitter cold out in early-ish March here in northern Wisconsin. I had a request for a video about seed starting. I need to preface this by telling you that I'm a livestock person. I am fluent in poultry, and I only speak conversational cabbage. So we'll be learning together on a lot of gardening things. I did grow up gardening, and I've successfully done a garden for a number of years now, but I'm definitely... It is sunshiny, yes. I'm definitely not an expert by any means, but I do know some things. So please move your hand.
Okay.
Thank you. Making videos with littles around is always fun. So let's get into it and talk about seed starting. What kind of seeds are you going to want to start? Basically, for our zone in northern Wisconsin, you want to start almost anything that's going to take you longer than 50 days. It should say right in your packet, the days to maturity. Anything that's going to be longer than about 50, 60 days, you'll probably want to start on the side. So that's all your tomatoes, peppers, hot peppers. You need to start in like January. They take a long time. Your seed packets, and when you're shopping for seed and everything, that's just something that you should automatically be looking at is days to maturity. I don't start any root vegetables inside. First of all, those are mostly cold vegetables anyways, so they're all right in early spring being planted out there as soon as the soil is worked. And you don't want to move carrots and stuff because it'll make their roots look funny, which is obviously what you're going for. What are we going to grow today? Today we're going to grow black hollyhocks. I have two different versions of these. This one's from Baker's Creek, and then this one is from Grand Prismatic Seed. And I ordered these to use them for fiber dye. So hopefully we'll be able to experiment with that in a little while. Yes? Mm-hmm. So let's get started with seed starting. First, you need something to grow them in, some kind of dirt. You can get super fancy with this and get... There's Bella. Say hi. You can get super fancy with this and get all kinds of, really expensive seed starting mix and all that. If that's the way you want to go for it. Especially if you're growing just a home garden or a backyard garden, that might be the way to go because it's not that expensive for just a few seeds. But if you're starting a market garden or a big regenerative permaculture garden, then you might want to have a little bit of a cheaper option. What you do not want is garden soil. Garden soil or compost from outside or something is too heavy. It will not allow the root systems to develop properly, and it will stunt the growth of your plants, and it might even stop it completely if they can't get to the nutrients and the water they need. So I use potting soil, and I think this one has some coconut husk mixed in it just because I had a leftover bag of lizard bedding. So I figured why not try it because it holds moisture and stuff. So you want something that holds moisture but drains well. I pre-moisten my seed starting things and my transplant soil as well. If you can pick it up and there's water dripping out of your hands, it's way too wet. Way too wet, and you're going to drown your little seeds. And if it's just crumbly, then it's way too dry and they're not getting what they need and they're not going to start the germination process. So my test is you pick it up and you can squeeze and then the water comes out. That's my test. This actually might be a little bit wet, but it'll be mostly okay. Please be respectful.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So then, what are we going to put this dirt in? There are a lot of options for a lot of price ranges. You can go with,
soil.
Yes, this is the soil, but what do we put the soil in? We have to put it in a container, right?
Oh, it needs air.
It needs air too. Okay, excellent. So you can get like peat pots and paper pots that are really good for the environment because they biodegrade. You can also use like berry boxes like this. I don't start things like tomatoes and stuff in real biodegradable containers because they rot out before I can do anything with them, and I sell seedlings too, so I want to make sure I have a container that's somewhat sturdy. I do upcycle like berry boxes because they already have the drainage holes and everything. And what else are you going to do with a tomato or a berry box? I really wish they wouldn't sell them in these things, but sometimes in a pinch in northern Wisconsin in the winter, that's what you have to buy. Also, these things that like store-bought mushrooms come in, just make sure you're putting drainage holes in. Drainage is really important. These kind of little plastic pots that you find everywhere, these work just fine. There's nothing wrong with them. They've got holes in the bottom and stuff. I don't actually care for the really flimsy ones because they're really hard to reuse. If you like crinkle them wrong or you step on one or something, they're toast and they're done. So if you're really careful with your equipment, these can be just fine too. Just make sure you're reusing stuff, especially plastics. We obviously want to be getting away from the use of plastics, but there's something to be said about reusability. So if you're reusing something season after season, that's still better for the environment than shipping in a bunch of new peat pots and processing that. So that's kind of your own preference as far as regenerative living and sustainability goes. And make your peace with either shipping and manufacturing or reusing or recycling. You just have to do your research and decide what your comfort zone is on that. I, this year, am using all my upcycled things, put drainage holes and stuff in them. And then I'm actually going to use red Solo cups for most of it because it provides a pot that my plants can stay in for quite a long time. This is a pretty decent sized pot too, but you know those little like 6-pack cells? Your plants can't stay in there very long. So then you're just having to repot and move the roots around and stuff. And that's too much futzing with it. I'd rather just have it be able to sit there and do its thing. Sibylla, she's saying hi. I like when the kids are around when I'm doing gardening things because then they learn about it. And then they grow up with gardening being normal. And so they just grow up and do it. Teach them when they're young. Anyways, I'm not actually starting any of my spring starting seeds yet because it's not time. The first one I have to start is a salvia that I'm also growing for a dye plant. And that starts in a couple weeks. So let's talk about that. When do you start seed starting? Please be quiet. Thank you. When do you start seed starting? You need to look up your frost date, your estimated last frost date. It is an estimated last frost date. So that's what you want to do your seed math on. The back of your seed packet will tell you, start 4 weeks before last frost. And you just count back and start that. But a caveat on that is you don't want to get married into the mathematics of it. Like a farmer's almanac says June 1st, so I'm going to plant June 1st. You need to still be looking at what the weather is doing. If there's torrential downpours, you're not going to want to start then because your seeds and seedlings all get washed away. If it's, if there's a chance that it's going to dip below freezing, then just wait a little bit. So the estimated last frost date is just that. It's an estimation of when you can put your starts and your seeds in your garden. You just need to be paying attention to the weather and all that. Seeds don't actually need light to germinate unless it says so. So there's perennial flowers and herbs like light to germinate. Usually, because that's not the norm, the seed packet will say on it that it needs light to germinate. And then I'll talk about light in a minute. But generally, seeds just need warmth. So you want to be shooting for somewhere between 60 and 80 degrees for starting your seeds for vegetables and stuff. I'm dropping stuff. I have these lights that I clip to my baker's racks, or I zip strip to my baker's racks. I really like these. They have red and blue spectrum in them. They have full spectrum for your plants, and we had really good success with these last year. Our plants didn't get leggy or anything. And then they're also in our south-facing room with 2 south-facing windows in it, so they get some natural light. We are upgrading to a greenhouse when we can. That's kind of the theme of our homestead is when we can do it, we'll do it. But for now, we make do with what we have. I did today. Oh, one last thing. Talking about marking your seeds with, I'm going to use red Solo cups because I'm going to sell a lot of seedlings this year. And it's just a nice transportable package. Drainage holes, poke the drainage holes in. You can just write right on those with permanent marker. Or put a piece of masking tape and write on it. I have some of these plastic things from years past. Hi, Bubby. Can you please go find something to do? Yeah. Thank you. So I don't like these because you can only write one thing on them, and I grow a lot of different varieties. I like to experiment, which is probably why I don't have huge production all the time, but my gardens are always interesting. So I like to experiment, and these are not, you can't, yeah, you can have one. You can't like erase your permanent marker on it and stuff, and if you put tape over it and write on that, then it falls off and it gets all gross. I'm just not a fan of plastic. Just use as little plastic as possible is what sometimes you have to, but use as little plastic as possible. For labeling seed starts, nothing beats the popsicle stick and a ballpoint pen. It's classic. It's simple. You can throw these things in the garden and they'll rot away. These are my favorite. And you can get like a bazillion of them for no money. So that's awesome. Today though, you got it? All right. She's procuring a snack. Today though, what I wanted to talk about is this new garden witchcraft I've heard about, called winter sowing. And basically what we're going to do is make a little greenhouse and then go put it in a snowbank. So I have a milk carton here. This is my first year doing this, so I'll report back. We did start some in February that we put out there. Yes. We did start some in February. Yeah, these videos are always going to be interrupted by children. Just get on board with it. Because, again, you do what you can with what you have. So we started some in February. And they're out there. And I discovered something about milk jugs to do this winter sowing. They're a little bit flimsy, so when you get a bunch of snow on them, they kind of crumple up. So, I mean, I have this milk jug, so I'm going to use it. But I prefer the vinegar jugs, like the big, that you get like apple cider vinegar, the big jugs in it. And we use a lot of that on our homestead. I prefer that because they're not crumbling out there. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. This is all a grand experiment. So what I did was I poked drainage holes, not slits, drainage holes in the bottom. You want quite a bit of drainage on these because they will build up moisture. And then I left the handle alone, but I cut on this top so that I can have this hinge situation because I'm notorious for losing the top of my containers of any kind. So I like it all to be attached. And then also this way I won't need to put ventilation holes in the top because I've punched, you see that? I've punched holes with a hole puncher here. And then when it comes time to seal this up, we're just going to put little bread twist ties in there and twist it together. Which will make this more reusable because if you're using tape and you have to rip it off all the time, I don't know, it just seems like a pain in the butt. Plus, tape is plastic. So much plastic. We can't get away from plastic. Let's work on that as a society. Okay, so I have my pre-moistened potting soil. Again, loose, light, fluffy. And I'm going to open my guy here and just plop it in. So, on these winter gardens and when you're starting your regular seed pots, you don't want air pockets in the soil because it'll settle and then it'll disturb the root system and all that. But you don't want to like smush it down so it's hard packed because again, that'll compact soil hurts the roots. So we just fill in a little bit. These guys won't be in there very long, but they will apparently germinate outside in the snow. I mean, it makes sense because stratification and all that. So the kind of things you're going to want to do winter sowing with are, let's see, hollyhock, echinacea, things that like to reseed, or perennials, or biennials, and anything that says sow in early spring or sow as soon as the soil is workable, you can start it in here. And the benefit of this is that they're already out there experiencing the super cold temperatures and the warm temperatures, and they're experiencing the sunlight and the photo periods. They're experiencing all that out there. And it traps the moisture in so you don't have to be watering them or anything. Supposedly it makes for stronger seed starts, and honestly the science makes sense to me, so I'm willing to give it a chance. And that's my MO on most garden things. If you can scientifically make sense to me with it, I'll probably give it a chance. So I have my dirt in here, my soil in here. not dirt. I have my soil in here. And again, it's a little bit wet, but it's got drainage holes in it. It'll be fine. I kind of got a little gung-ho about the water, but it'll be okay. So I am going to actually start 2 different species of, or not different species, different varieties of this. I'm going to plant 6 seeds of each variety because you don't want to overcrowd this, but you do want to put enough in there that you get a good test out of it. If you're going to test anything, make sure you have enough seeds to actually be getting a good read on whether this is a good germination technique or not. So I'm going to put 6 in each, so that's 12 seeds total in here. 5 and 6. And your seed packet will tell you how far down you want to poke your seeds. Just do it with your finger. You don't need fancy tools. Just do it with your finger. Get your hands in the dirt. Get dirt under your fingernails. It's good for you. So your seed packet will tell you how far down you need to plant these seeds, or it should. If not, just Google is your friend. Like, look it up. It's really fast. Look it up. So these guys, they're 1/4 inch depth, so you barely poke these things in. Surface sowing means you just kind of throw it on the dirt and then sprinkle a little dirt over the top if it makes you feel good. An inch is about, your first knuckle or so. That would be an inch. So these are barely getting poked in there, just 1/4 of an inch. So on this side I'm using the plastic ones in here just because they're going to be in there for a while, so. And I have them. It's not like I bought new ones or anything. So I marked where my Grand Prismatic seeds are, and now I'm going to do the Baker's Creek seeds, because that's something I want to see too. Like what variety is going to germinate and thrive better. Grand Prismatic, the reason I order from there is they have a lot of dye plants that I'm really interested in. They kind of specialize in that, but they are from Utah, so I'm not sure how well their seeds are going to do in our Wisconsin climate, but hey, let's give it a shot. Baker Creek is really good about making seeds for all climates, and very good about educating their consumers about zones and things like that, and things that will grow in different places. Carefully put the rest of my seeds back. This may seem really basic, but it's something I'm really bad at. You get like hundreds of seeds in a packet. Chances are you don't need to sow all these seeds. And you'll notice that most of them have an expiration date on the back. That's a government thing. They have to put that on there as a product. They have to put that on there that it was for this growing season. But seeds can last for years and years and years if properly stored in a little bit of a breathable container, so paper. And then I keep mine in wooden boxes. I have special wooden boxes for seeds. So if you're keeping your seeds dry and cool and in the dark, they last for years. I have some radishes I grew last year from my grandma's seeds that were like 15 years old, and they grew. So don't use your whole seed packet if you don't need to. That's just kind of wasteful, and that's too many plant babies to take care of. That's just too many. Okay, so now I have marked off where my Baker's Creek ones are and my Grand Prismatic ones, and we are going to tie this up. So this one I don't have to water, which is great. It's just going to be out there doing its thing in a snowbank. I'm just going to put it on the deck in the snow. And apparently in the spring, we'll have nice little shoots coming up. So we shall see. I will keep you updated about that. Anyways, when I'm planting my non-winter sowing seeds, my regular sowing seeds, when I'm starting them inside, I lost my twist tie, so I'll find it before I put it outside. Oh, there it is. When I'm starting those, when you water them, you don't want to water from above, because it can disrupt your little seedling and upset it. You want to, I like the trays, the seed trays, that you can just set it in and then fill it up with a little water and let it wick up and let the roots go down to the water like they're supposed to and get the water and bring it back up. You can also, if you feel like it, use a mister, a little sprayer mister thing. Those are really unlikely to disturb your seeds or their roots or anything like that. So you can use that. Just with a mister, understand that you're only getting the very surface of the soil. So I actually tend to do both. If I notice the surface is drying out, I'll mist it a little bit. And then also check the water level. So here's our winter sowing garden. I've heard different things about putting the cap on or leaving the cap off. It makes more sense to me to put the cap on. So that's what I'm going to do. And then once the seeds start sprouting and they need more light, then you take the cap off. So that's what I'm going to do. This will just go outside in the snowbank and we'll check on it once everything starts thawing and see where we're at. That I have out there already some Asian greens, some bok choy, some peas. What else did we do? Is that it? Some lettuce I think I had out there.
Carrots!
Oh, no, we didn't put carrots out there. We put lettuce out there.
Radishes.
No radishes either, not yet. So back to watering. Sorry, I'm a little distracted. You want to be watering from below. So I like these kind of watering cans, these little indoor house plant guys, because you can just like tuck them between the cracks on your little red Solo pots and fill it up that way. Or again, a mister. Just make sure. I know a lot of people like to clean with essential oils and stuff. Make sure you're using a new mister bottle, a spray bottle, and label it for only water. Because if you're gonna put, cleaning solutions and stuff in there, they're eco-friendly or whatever. But if you have any leftover oil residue in there, it's going to get in your plants, and they don't like that very much. It's not good for them. So make sure you're only putting water in your misters. Plant math. So we mentioned that you want to know your last frost date. Your last frost date. And then count back from there. I have a special calendar just for garden stuff that tells me when I start these seeds, that I mark it in pencil because sometimes schedule gets in the way and you can't start it that day. And I like to take pretty good notes so I can learn from my mistakes primarily. So I write it in pencil, and then I will actually write down when I do start the seed. And then a lot of my research about my plants is just when they're going to germinate and things like that. So you want to put an estimated germination date, mark that as well on your calendar, just so you can keep track. Again, it's like a pregnant woman. She's not going to give birth exactly 9 months. It's life. Give it some flexibility. It's not math. It's life. So you want to know round about when your seeds should be sprouting, so you can know if it's like 4 weeks late that there's something went wrong, and to abandon that one. And then you also want to mark when they can be put out. Now, I will tell you, my number one struggle with seed starting is hardening off. I am terrible at that. I am so impatient. So while we're doing hardening off this year, I'll take you along for that journey, and we'll learn about that a little bit more together, because I fried my tomatoes last year, but the ones that did survive were really tough. And that's something that you should think about when you're seed starting too. People will tell you have to use distilled water blessed by Tibetan shamans. You don't need that. Just use your tap water. And because the more little stresses you can put your seeds through, you don't want to throw pathogens at them directly. So you do want to use a sterile seed starting mix and stuff. But the more little stresses you can put them through, the tougher your plant's going to be. So it's really hard not to want to baby your plants, but that actually leads to a lot of overcare, like overwatering. I'm really bad about overwatering because I always think they need me. Your plants don't need you. They want to survive. They want to live. They will tell you when they need something. So make sure you're not overwatering. If you touch the soil and it squishes around your finger with water, that like a really soggy sponge, that's too much. If it's crumbly, it's too dry, it needs water. A plant isn't going to die in an hour of not having the right amount of water. There's some flexibility there. You just don't want to leave it like that for a day. That's a lot for a little baby plant. What else? We talked about the calendar and writing stuff down, both when you're supposed to do it and when it actually happens. Those are important. We're going to talk about hardening off later. We talked about soil and your options there. We talked about containers for when you're ready to start your seeds. If there is anything I have missed that you are asking about, I am going to disable YouTube comments just because it's YouTube. But you can hop over to our Facebook page, Amanita Acres, and I'll link this video there, and you can ask me questions there, and we'll learn about this together. So now I'm going to go out and put my little winter garden out, and we'll see what happens with that. Again, I'm not starting seeds even until March 23rd is when I'm supposed to start a salvia species. That isn't supposed to grow here. It's super not supposed to grow here. But I want to try it because it has really beautiful blue flowers, and I'm hoping to get at least good eco prints out of it, if not good fiber dye. And then after that, I'm really not starting much until about halfway through April. I tend to start too early, and then my plants get really long and leggy, and then they're not very stable in the garden. The only ones that are pretty cool that you can start early, and if they get too leggy, you can bury them, are tomatoes, because they have little rootlets on them, on their stems. So tomatoes actually are vines. They want to fall over and make new roots. That's what they want to do. We don't let tomatoes be tomatoes when we grow them. So if a tomato gets too leggy just means tall. If it gets too tall and is like flopping over, you can transplant it and transplant it a little deeper. You don't want to do that with all transplants because some of them will just rot the stem if it's underground. But tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, those you can all do that with, and they'll be okay. Peppers you don't want to go too low because they don't actually make true roots. But tomatoes do. Tomatoes will make new roots if you plant them pretty deep. What else, Billa? Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's everything about seed starting. Again, you have any questions, please let me know. We're obviously new to this YouTube thing. So thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you on our next adventure. Bye.